Hey, hello everyone. First of all, welcome to today's session. We are going to talk about the work remotely solutions, tips and tricks for business owners, right? So, right now the situation is a kind of challenge, and this is part of our effort, try to give more help into the community. So after today's session, I hope everyone will be able to get to the understanding how we can provide the remote work solutions to your employees, and you can make some informed decisions. So a little bit about me. My name is Johnny, and I'm the CISSP since 2001. And I used to lead the design and the implementation for Canada Post's online service infrastructure. And currently I'm working on the Neighborhood Watch Plus project, which is an AI-based community safety platform. And this is part of the incubated project from More Secure. That's why I have both logo, Neighborhood Watch Plus More Secure there, as they are the sponsor for today's seminar. So I had work remotely experience since 2002 when I used to work for Canada Post. At that time, remote working is pretty much like a privilege at that time. So the executives, they have that access, but most of the employees, they have to go to the office to work there. Since we are taking care of the production office, all kinds of infrastructure, so we had to work pretty much anywhere from the world. So before today's session, I just want to have a quick introduction for Neighborhood Watch Plus. So our mission is to provide affordable private security guarding as a service, right? And we help people to watch the property 7/24. So you can have peace of mind all the time. If you are interested, you can get to know me, and you can contact me from the phone number here, and also from the online form there as well. Yeah, let me start my video camera as well. And the current challenge for COVID-19, you probably heard a lot of the, like from federal to local government perspective, they declare some sort of state emergency. And because of that, most of the business are forced or recommended to work remotely. So in that situation, you have to provide your employees some sort of remote access. And that is going to provide some, come with some security challenge as well. Think about it, now you have to open your infrastructure to the internet, to the public pretty much all the time. And that new security challenge also give you the lack of, on top of you're already very short of the resources for you. So those challenges together, we hope when people rush into the remote access, they need to keep in mind what's the best options for them and how to deal with that. And if we, as an entrepreneur, we always look at things from the bright side as well. So some of the stuff I can think of for the business is hopefully by providing the remote access solutions, you can have more efficient business operation, and your business will be more resilient based on the BCP, business continuity planning. Uh, Most of the people, most of the companies, they have to provide some sort of remote work access for their employee in order to have their BCP. And I look at the industry nowadays, there are more and more online opportunities, new revenue generated too. So people are talking about different business model in order to have more business generate revenue from online nowadays. So, and after you provide the remote access, hopefully you can make your employee happier, and that will help you your retention for the employee as well. So look at the bright side. This might not be might help the business to go into a higher level as well. So talk about the infrastructure change, right? So in the very beginning, if we look at the diagram from left to right, in the beginning, we have the on-premise solutions, and you pretty much manage everything from your infrastructure operation system and the application from bottom up. And then after that, you start to have the IaaS, PaaS or SaaS, right? Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or the software as a service, right? So what that means to you, you start to outsource of your infrastructure, network storage layer to the service providers. And then you start to outsource more if you use stuff like, let's say, for example, for the IaaS, one typical example would be like a DigitalOcean, the IaaS provider, or the Google Cloud Service, or the Azure Cloud Service, right, as well. So those are the typical IaaS providers. Then you start to deploy your application. If you say, okay, I don't even want to manage the platform. For example, your Java platform or your Ruby on Rails, you start to use services like a Heroku. You just deploy your application into the PaaS provider, then you have the application running for you. But you still need to manage, and you need to do the development for your applications, right? You still need to manage your data there as well. So on top of that, you see nowadays people are using more SaaS service, right? It can be your email as Google Apps Suite, or your CRM, or your accounting system online. They all present to you as a software as a service. So you just go ahead, log in online, and you start to use the application. You don't need to worry any layer from infrastructure to the application. So the reason I'm talking about the cloud is, so if you have your application or your PaaS or your SaaS or your IaaS, you use a cloud service already, you don't need to worry about the remote access, because literally those third-party providers, they are you can have remote access already, right? But those convenience comes with a cost. One typical cost, one is because the more you outsource, for sure, you need to pay a little bit more from time to time. That may accumulate into a big cost for you, especially for the small business owners, right? So we have more people join. Welcome this new friend to join this seminar. And except the cost, also it comes the security as well. So if you don't want to have your data exposed. You want to keep more privacy for you. I know some of the businesses nowadays they still run some sort of like a private server into their own infrastructure. That's one of the reason we see more and more business from small to large enterprise. They're running into this hybrid solution. They not only they have to keep some of the infrastructure running internally, but also they use a cloud service. That's why uh, nowadays when you see the remote access, it has um, it's still, no matter how much you're using the cloud service, it's still widely required for the business as well for the remote access. So what is a remote access in the traditional world? This is a very typical application called a VPN. So virtual private networks. In the beginning, people are trying to use, let's say, internet as a more cost-effective way to connect their branch offices or connect with their business partners. That's how it gets started, right? So at that time, we call it as site-to-site VPN. So basically, it's a tunnel you build on top of the internet public network, and then you have a secure connection between your two branch office or your partner networks. But that's not what we're talking about. We are actually talking about the bottom part of this diagram, and we call it remote access VPN. When you go to internet, search the VPN solution for the remote working. So that's a typical VPN you need to search, remote access VPN. So basically it's still a tunnel technology. You enable your remote user be able to access your resource in your corporate. And this is sometimes this might be confusing to you as well. This is a type of VPN when you go to the Google search. Uh, so when you say VPN like this, they enable you to access an internet resource from a security tunnel. So this is more to protect your privacy or your data security. So, but this is not going to provide you the remote access into your corporate network. So it's not this type of VPN you're talking about. So once we build up the tunnel, right? And once we build up a network connectivity securely from your remote user into your corporate asset, we now need to think about how we can enable those resources in your corporate to enable the remote access. Normally in the Windows world, for the servers, you need to enable the remote access service, and you need to apply all sorts of Microsoft license, like a client access license, server seat or server license, those sort of things to enable your user is able to get in. So for the desktop, for the Windows desktop as well, you can enable the remote access for your desktop. So they basically use the same technology, remote desktop protocol. That's an old term, and you can uh, enable the remote access. On top of that, you need to also make sure your firewall open the ports for the remote access as well. For the Linux servers, right? Linux server or desktop, for some of the people might be using the Linux desktop nowadays already, like Ubuntu, for example. So it's way much easier because most of the Linux systems, they provide the SSH as a terminal access. That's a command line access into your server or your desktop, right? And If you want to have the GUI, there's the GUI remote access solution as well. One I'm going to talk about in the client side, which is called VNC. Of course, at the same time, you need to open the firewall for your Linux access as well. And for the macOS, for the Apple work, it's basically another type of Linux. That's the same principle for Linux applies there as well. Now, after you enable the remote access for the server side, you need to provide your remote access client, right? For each remote working employee, they need to either use a native remote access client, let's say, for example, in the Windows world. That's called direct access in this category, right? There, you need to have those direct access, remote access client installed, or use a native one from your remote working employee. For the Windows side, you can use RDP client, and for the Linux, you can use SSH client. For the Linux GUI access, you can use a VNC client. And there's one type of very efficient remote access client called No Machine, and it can help you widely connect to Windows, desktop, laptop, or even a pad as well, and also Raspberry Pi as well. The reason I'm mentioning that No Machine is not because it's free, but also it's very bandwidth efficient. I still remember in the older days when I had to connect remotely to the GUI interface with a very small bandwidth while I'm working remotely. Most of the time, if I cannot get a good response from the remote access target or the asset, I just switch to No Machine, and that helped me to get smooth remote access. So if you have that situation, always keep in mind that there's some solution called No Machine, and it's free for you. So those are the typical direct type of remote access, which when I say direct, I mean you have a remote access target and you have a remote access client that they just connect the directly together. And nowadays in the industry, there's another type of third-party providers. They can help you to build up your remote access more easily that way. So what they can do is for this kind of third-party remote access provider, normally you don't need to have any tunnel in between. You don't need to build up your VPN first. All you need to do, like for example, go to my PC, TeamViewer, stuff like that. All you need to do is drop a piece of code, a big piece of software into your either your server or your desktop, and then from your remote access client, let's say the client, when you are at home or you are on the road, you just use a machine or you use your laptop with you. Go to the service provider's website, and then from there you can log in, and you can have access to your office asset, to your desktop or your server in your data center. The TeamViewer is another type. Like you still need to install the client, the TeamViewer client in your, for example, the laptop with you. But for the TeamViewer, once you install the client, you no longer need, you don't need to go to their website. You just type in your session ID, and that will help you build up the connection back to your office PC or your servers. So that will help you to get the remote access. But those are all like not direct connection. So so you can imagine there's a third party in the between, and your server and your client, or your either it's a web browser or a TeamViewer client. Um, you have to go through the third party in order to build up that connection. And normally those are the paid solutions for you, and you have to pay a monthly fee for that. The newer type of the client access, remote access, is called what I call clientless. I just touched based on some of the third-party providers. They provide this remote access by let you go to their website to log in, and then you have the access. But that's normally for the third-party provider, you have to pay for the service fee. Normally it generates maybe around $15 for each user. If you do have like maybe 10, 20 users, that's still a small amount of that's still some money for you as add into your monthly cost, right? So what I'm telling you about this one is for the remote access via the browser, you can use those free like a third-party providers. Also, you can use these free solutions. As I promised in today's session, and I try to give you more like free resources to help you to go through this tough period of time. So the free solution is called Guacamole. It's an Apache project. It's an open source project. It's also very mature project as well to provide the clientless remote access. So basically, this is a Tomcat server you install in your infrastructure, and then it provides with you a web interface, and you open that web interface through either SSL or TLS, and provides you as a secure web application, and that web application will enable you to have access into your office, like a PC, desktop, or the servers. It covers both Windows and Linux as well. And so, as I mentioned in the beginning, the security is a challenge for you if you want to enable the remote access, right? On top of the solutions I talked about, if you really want to have a more secure solution for you, you can consider this kind of like an infrastructure piece called Jump Server. We normally call it as a Jump Host or the Jump Box as well. And basically, this kind of this is a purposely built security hardened box. So you drop this kind of box, or you drop this kind of, either it's a appliance or the virtual appliance into your infrastructure, and you net it to access to be accessible from internet, right? Because it's a security feature already built in. You have this authentication, authorization, and audit functions built in. What that means to you is you can integrate you're already you probably have the LDAP or Active Directory in your infrastructure already, and you can integrate those kind of authentication with this jump box, and that will help you identify who's coming in. And also you can assign different permissions to each individual user, and with each individual user only certain corporate assets it can access, right? For example, they can only access this specific desktop, right? For the RDP, not that server. So with those authorizations set up, people when they are doing their stuff, for example, copy a file or run a command line program, all the stuff they're doing will be kept in audit trail. So it's been very much like a highly like a secure box for your jump server. So if you do have the situation like you have to run some very sensitive data through your remote access, right? Or you have some high privilege access, for example, your server, your backend, like a database or your application, and need to have the access, right? Remote access. You can consider this kind of jump server solution, or even you have some like a financial data you want have it to be contained within your control. You can consider the jump box as well. Let's say one typical example is those like companies, they may have to touch with credit card data information, right? So for example, in the if you are touching the credit card data information, you need to depends on the level of how you handle the data. You may need to get into the PCI audit, right? The payment card industry security data security standard. If you want one very important aspect for the PCI audit is to define the scope of your audit, right? Compliant. For that compliance perspective, if you can minimize your scope, it will be much better for you to pass the audit more cost effectively in a short amount of time. For example, if you need in your remote access solution, if you involve the third-party provider, so that third-party provider will be automatically into your audit scope. And when you increase your scope like that, it will very hard, you have to spend a lot of money, you have to spend a lot of time in order to pass that kind of audit. So that's why I'm presenting all kinds of solutions for you and help you to choose whatever solution is right for your environment. And some tips I want to share with you is first of all, do not expose RDP, which is a Windows Remote Desktop Protocol, to the public internet. So what I mean by that is I saw quite some cases, right? People just say, okay, I have the Windows server, I expose that Windows RDP service directly to the internet so people can use their Windows client, RDP client, to access my server or my desktop from remotely. And the problem for that is the RDP protocol itself from the industry, especially from the security expert perspective, it's not secure by design itself. It's easy to be compromised. So you have the challenge to show your data security is being guarded by you if you use RDP directly on the public internet. So how you can do that is, as I mentioned before, you absolutely need to add a VPN tunnel, and like you run the RDP on top of the VPN tunnel that way. So the second tip is you have or as a security practice, you always need to bear in mind that a minimum privilege principle. So which means you just assign the permission to your remote access employee just enough, right? Not to give them too much like a privilege. That's always a bad practice. And the encryption over the public internet. The reason I mention that is not only the internet, but also you need to keep in mind that people are going to different places, use a public Wi-Fi as well. So you have to provide a solution in order to make sure the traffic goes through the network has to be encrypted. That encryption can be guaranteed by either the remote access VPN, or you can have the clientless remote access, but with encryption built in for the SSL or TLS, right? So once you have those kind of measures in place, you can make sure you can be assured that encryption will help your data security. And now I can say a lot of like business jump into the remote access based on the current situation. While you're rushing into providing the remote access, keep in mind now you're opening the door not only to your employee but also to all kinds of people out there as well. So one very like we as a security practice, we call it as a no hanging fruit, which is before you do opening those assets to internet, always apply the latest security patches before you open, right? And also from time to time, you need to always go back to review your asset to see if you have the patches applied recently, and try to patch it as frequently as possible. So when we go to talk about a remote access solution, first step we always keep in mind is what kind of application we want to provide as a provide to the employee for remote access, right? Are they on-premise application, or are they the application in the cloud already, right? So if it's an on-premise application, we need to think about how to access those applications. Do I need to go through the desktop in the office to access that application, or do I have to log into the server to access that application, right? And also, some of the applications for your equipment as well. For example, your HVAC, right? Or your CCTV camera system, if you want to have the remote access to that, right? Once we get a list of those applications and the devices, for example, we now know how many people and how many devices we need to have access, right? And based on that, we say, okay, for each individual application, what are the security requirements for them, right? And if you have that list already, and you have the rough idea, add together what kind of bandwidth requirement for your remote access, right? We know, for example, last week, right, one of the major banks in Canada, right, they have that, like when they are running most of the employees to go work remotely, they had a big trouble for the network resource, right? And although they call it as a stress test, right? But that impact was pretty big because a lot of the, even their office employee, branch employees, they cannot access their network for almost like 2 days, which is like pretty big impact for their services. So when we consider all those factors in place, and we should be able to provide a reasonably very good user experience remote access for your employees. And as a company, as more secure, we do have some offering for the security products here. Like for example, the VPN firewall server. We leverage the from the picture, you can tell this is what we have for our customers deployed in the field already. It's a highly available dual module solution, and we leverage some sort of like a finesse design for the hardware itself, so it's very robust. We have that solution deployed into our client in a very harsh environment, and so far, like almost 3 years now, and there's no single point of failure happen. Those boxes are just rock solid, right? And we leverage them to provide our product as a firewall VPN, and we can install that guacamole for the remote access. And also we provide that as a jump server as well. So if you're interested, you can let us know. And also we provide a professional service and also the managed service. The professional service, we can help you build the solution. If you are lack of resource to manage those solutions by yourself, we can provide a managed service as well. And last but not least, right, we also have this crisis management, more specifically the pandemic response service. So we have the resource who work with government to deal with this crisis situation, to help you deal with communication with your employee and manage those different kind of level of the escalation when you're into the crisis situation. So if you're interested, let us know as well. And here are some links in terms of your workplace readiness, right, to prepare it. And we have the links from the WHO, from the government of Canada, from some Canadian Chamber of Business as well. Those links are out there, and if you're interested, please send me an email, and I can forward this whole copy of the slide to you, and some of the tips to manage the remote team as well. Yeah, that's pretty much for today's presentation itself. If you do have any question, we do have about 15 minutes. We can chat a little bit more about your situation, or if you have any question, please feel free, let me know. You can unmute yourself, or use a chat box if you want to talk about your situation. I can see quite of the people online, and it's Alan, Calvin, Nick. Some of them I know, my old time friend. Some of them maybe the new friend as well. So I'm going to wait for, yeah. Is there any questions for you guys? Yeah, if not, then thanks for attending. Here is my contact. My name John Lee, and that's my email. And you're welcome to send me a request for the LinkedIn, and you are welcome to just go to Neighborhood Watch Plus website, and more secure website if you want to find out more about us. Yeah, that's it for today's session. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope we can have some time chat about more later for some other more interesting stuff. Once the pandemic is over, I hope everyone will get together, have fun together again. But before that, please take care, and enjoy the time and stay home with your family. Thanks, and see you later.